right? So you'll remember that a tendon is a variable mechanical tissue. That if you start at the muscle end of the tendon, it's very, very stretchy. If you go towards the bone, you get to the middle of the tendon, it's going to be less stretchy, and it's going to be very stiff as a bone when you get close to the bone. So now what we're going to look at is what we are changing here in the next two lectures. And really what we're looking at is this region out here, the muscle end of the tendon. As we do things to improve performance, that's going to shift up and become stiffer. The stiffer it is, the better we can store and return energy passively. You don't have to do anything. You're going to stretch and you're going to recoil. And that is going to save your body energy because you don't have to use your muscle to contract. So these tendons and ligaments stretch and recoil, and that stretch and recoil in the tendon or the ligament is going to be completely without energy cost. All right? So this brings us to the first paper that we have, and this is a paper, again, by Andy Jones. You'll remember the name. He was the one who was the physiologist who looked at Paula Radcliffe's economy and her performance. And he's the one who found that even though her VO2 max was going down, her performance was improving. And the reason for that was that her economy was getting better. So then what he did is he came back and he got a bunch of his friends, his guy friends here. And these are all men who are international level runners for the UK. And what he did is he said that they're really good runners. VO2 max of 73. That's a really good runner. All right, now he takes these really good runners with VO2 maxes of 73, and he does a simple thing. He has them reach towards their toes and see how close they get to their toes. If they can't get close to their toes, they're down here in the negative. Their 0 is getting to your toe. -5 means 5 centimeters from your toe. -15 is like 15 centimeters from your toes. And if you can get past your toes, that means you're down here. So these are the people who do a lot of flexibility training, and what you can see is that they're now able to get 10 to 15 to 20 centimeters past their toes. They're getting, about their full wrist past their toe. All right, so now what did they do? They measure how much oxygen it costs to run at 16 kilometers an hour. So this is a measure for passive stiffness, sit and reach score, and then running economy. So what happens as you increase your you decrease your passive stiffness because you're more flexible, that means you go up. As you decrease your passive stiffness, you come down. So if you become more stiff, that means you're going to go down the y-axis. So the more stiff you are, the more you are at this end. The less stiff you are, the more you are over here. So VO2 max at 16 kilometers an hour, so that's how much oxygen it costs you to run 16 kilometers an hour at 1% grade. So you want this number, you want the x-axis to be as low as possible. Because if you can run 16 kilometers an hour and it almost costs you no oxygen, that's great, because that means you're not going to use as much energy to run that speed. These guys up here, they're all running and they're all using a ton of oxygen. They're at 57, 58 milliliters per kilogram per minute, where people at the same VO2 max are, almost, some of them are 10 milliliters per kilogram per minute lower. And so if you're 10 milliliters per kilogram per minute lower, you have about, you're really looking at a 25% or 20 to 25% better running economy. So that means that they're able to run more economically if they are stiffer. So the stiffer you are, the more passive stiffness your tendons and muscles have, the more economical you're going to run because you're going to store more energy and return it. If you have a spring where you can barely pull it apart, it's going to take you a while to pull it apart the first couple of times. But once you get it going, now you get all the energy back from that spring. If you have a really stretchy spring, you're going to lose a lot of that energy because it's going to come out in other movements and in other kind of areas rather than just stretch and recoil. Okay, so what goes into passive stiffness? So passive stiffness is determined by these 5 components. Collagen fibril density, so how many collagen fibrils you have in the ligament, the diameter of those collagen fibrils, the orientation, so if you have all of your collagen fibrils going aligned versus all of them being spread, if you have them spread, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to do this. Okay, so that means it's going to be less stiff because you're pulling it and it's going to stretch. And as it stretches, there's going to be more compression, and the compression is easier. And that means there's less stiffness in the compression, and you're going to lose more energy. Okay? Collagen cross-linking, we've already told you how important that is for stiffness. And then the other thing is basal muscle tone. And the reason basal muscle tone is in here is a lot of times what you'll feel is like, oh, you know, my arm is really, really tight. And I've got this really, really tight spot here. And a lot of times what that is that you've got some sort of pressure from another system, and that's kind of caused a basal activation of the muscle. So you go to move and you feel a lot of tightness. And that's because some of these, there's some sort of an impingement on a neural plexus. You're stimulating the nerve a little bit, and your basal muscle tone has gone up, and so you feel stiffer, and you are stiffer. So basal muscle tone goes into the passive stiffness measure. Okay, so all of these things are going to be important. So as we're going to try and improve passive stiffness, or we're going to try and change the passive stiffness, we're going to try and increase the amount and the size of our collagen fibrils. We can't really change the orientation too much, but we can also modify the cross-linking. And basal muscle tone is one of the things that you're going to do, but it's not really going to go and be something you train. Okay? All right. So it's not just running where stiffness is actually really good for performance. This is cyclists, and cyclists looking at power or torque here. And what you can do is you can see that the cyclist from the stiff group is the black line. The cyclist from the compliant group is the dotted line. And what you can see is that the stiffer you are, first of all, the more torque you're generating. And secondly, look, the peak torque is here versus here. So the faster you're generating that torque, that means you're generating more power. Okay? And that means that you're shifting over so that by the second or third contraction, you're way ahead. Okay? So you're developing power much, much faster through the full range of motion. And that means that you're going to perform a lot better. You're going to be able to be more economical on the bike, as well as being more economical in the run or in the rowing or in swimming or any of these types of things, that as you increase the stiffness through those joints but you can still perform the range of motion, you are now going to be able to store and return more energy for free. It's going to cost you less energy. The result is you're going to perform better.